Hey, Concord here. So today I'm going to share a piece of equipment with you that got me into hi-fi. It's the Sony TA F120. It took me back because when I heard the Sony TA F120, I was like, wow, music can sound like this? Like I was hearing everything. I was hearing the cymbals. I was hearing the kick drum a lot better. Any other little instrument within the music I was hearing, and I'm like, this is a totally different experience. And it just started my hi-fi journey, and that's where I went, I know my hobby now. Now, when I look back on how I got into hi-fi, it all started with one brand. And for me, that brand was Sony. Sony had a decent hi-fi line. I mean, back in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s and very early 90s, Sony would make high-end components. Now, well, they're not into the home hi-fi range as much. They're still heavily into their SLR cameras, their broadcasting equipment, and their movie production range. However, their hi-fi audio range is not really a thing anymore. It's kind of dropped off. Look, some of their gear in the past, their Sony TA ES range, is the range to get for vintage gear, I hear. Back in the 1970s, Sony had the TC9000 wheel-to-reel tape deck. In 1972, one of the earliest stereo component systems. 1976, you have Sony speakers, the SSG7. And in 1982, Sony introduced their first CD player, the CDP-101. And as I said before, the Sony TA-ES series, that's the vintage gear that a lot of people like to get, and from what I hear, it still holds up pretty damn well. Now, I haven't heard any of them. I haven't listened to any of the ES series, so one day, hopefully I can have a listen and see what I think, but I believe it has quite a reputation. Now, the TA F120, it's a 30 watts per channel into 8 ohms. Now, the frequency response range is around that 7 hertz to 100 kilohertz, and it weighs around 6 kilos, probably 5 to 6 kilos, and its release was around 1990, and you can still find the manual online. Now, when I got the Sony TA F120, it was in such good condition, and you know what? With vintage gear, it's reliable. You know that old saying, they don't build it like they used to? Well, that's what I can... Oh, far out! Son of a... Okay, it's all good. It's totally fine. Now, on a serious note, I did take the lid off and it was totally fine. Now, for an amp that's over 34 years old, I did expect some dust to be inside. But on the whole, the amp was actually in really good condition. The capacitors seemed to be in good shape and the boards as well. Now, one thing I did do was I did change the 3 fuses. Now, fuses are quite cheap, so I went to my local electronics store, got 3 fuses and replaced them. Once that was done, I put the lid back on and I started setting up the Sony TA F120. I hooked up the speakers. They were Energy bookshelf speakers. Now, I believe Energy, I bought these some time ago. I got them secondhand. They're in such good shape. And I believe they're a Canadian speaker. And I connected the TA F120 to my MXN10 streamer. And there's one other thing I want to also let you know, and it's about the input selection. So let's go there. Now, one thing I want to say about this amp that I had forgot, and now that I have it, is the dials. it's still quite a definite switch over. It's still quite taut. It's not flimsy. I like that. And the same for the input selector. It's the same thing. I like that it's still a definite selection. It's not flimsy. And it's the same with the bass and the treble. When I turn the dials, the same thing is there. It's not flimsy. It's not really loose. It's still there. And when I turn the power on, it's great. It doesn't feel really springy. It doesn't feel easy to turn on. There's definitely some, you got to push it in a bit. I like it. And the look of it, for something that's 35 years old, it's still, you could put it in a hi-fi rack and you'd think it's something that was made today. One thing with the volume, it's very smooth. Given that it's 35 years old, of course there's no remote. So you have to get up and, find your volume that you like. Now, this amp has an inviting sound. And I'm going to play you a clip of when I started playing music for the first time on this amp. And you'll see my face. I actually have quite a smile on my face. And I was definitely taken by surprise. I had a smile on my face and I thought, wow, the amp, in terms of sound, it has an inviting sound. It's rich, it's full, and it just rocks. I love it. But it does lack those fine details. The highs, they're there, but they roll off, never reaching a highness you've probably heard better elsewhere. The mid-range, well, tonally, with some vocals it can get a little muddy. So be aware, it's fine, the vocal, that mid-range is fine, just don't turn it up too loud. And you're probably going to go, well, that's the case if you turn up most things loud. Well, this amp, you don't have to turn it up very loud before that starts to happen. So just be aware when turning it up quite loud, it may get worse. However, if you had a decent pair of bookshelf speakers or floor standing speakers, it will help, but it's never going to reach a nice high or a mid-range smoothness. Just be aware of that. Now, as I said, it's a rich, full sound. The bass is deep on this amp. I was actually really quite surprised because these little bookshelf speakers, I was like, wow, that cone was moving quite a bit. This amp, to me, the Sony TA F120, yeah, second hand can be the way to go. Just be aware though, with vintage gear, well, it may last one day, 1 month, 1 year, 10 years. It's something you're going to have to go in there with an expectation. But look, the Sony F120, I'm going to hold on to it. I really like this amp. Yes, it's nostalgia. Yes, it brings back memories. And it still puts a smile on my face. And I'm definitely holding on to this amp. Well, look, that's it from me. I wanted to also say, if you come to this channel and you don't subscribe, but you still come here, I appreciate the views. I think it's awesome that you come into my channel. Yes, a subscribe would be great because I can try get more gear to review, and I enjoy doing it. But look, it's near the end of the year, so enjoy your winter holidays or your summer holidays, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.